Welcome everyone to Data Stack Summit 2022. We have an exciting topic and an exciting lineup of participants today. My name is Sanjeev Mohan. I am a principal with SanjMo. It is an honor today to talk about how we are migrating to modern data architectures. And for that, we have brought together some of the thought leaders from our industry. We've got Jess Larson, and she's from Pinterest. We've got Mark Kidwell from Autodesk, and we've got Nikhil from Airbnb. So with that, I welcome everyone to this event. So happy that we get together and get to talk about what's happening in this exciting data and analytics space.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. So Jess, can you start with you? Can you please give us your introduction so we know who you are?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Jessica Larson. I am a data engineer at Pinterest, and I primarily work on our Snowflake enterprise data platform. I also just published a book a few months ago called Snowflake Access Control, just all around all of the considerations with database privacy. So,
very nice. And you are also a regular speaker, I understand.
I'm working on it. I've been doing a little bit more lately. Yeah.
That is great. Mark, how about yourself?
Hi, I'm Mark Kidwell with Autodesk. I'm the chief data architect for the Autodesk data platform. It's our customer 360 and product usage analytics platform. Prior to joining Autodesk about 3 years ago, I actually joined after consulting with Autodesk, but I've done consulting for a while, held a number of positions in software engineering and database engineering management.
Very nice. Great to have you on the show. Nikhil, you're the next.
Yeah. Hello all. I'm Nikhil. I have been with Airbnb for the last 4 years. I have been working primarily on building ML platforms, specifically feature platforms. And in past life, I was at Facebook doing stream processing systems, building stream processing platforms. I was at Walmart Labs doing actual ML. That was a really long time ago, but since then I haven't touched any ML. Before that, I was at Amazon, similarly doing a lot of NLP stuff.
Oh,
yeah, that's
So we have quite a variety here. We've got data engineer, data architect, if I may, and ML engineer. So we've got the spectrum covered. So with that, let's get started. So Jess, if I may, can I start with you? Can you please tell us what platform did you have prior to Snowflake, it seems? What did you migrate to? And what were the drivers, the pain points that made Pinterest migrate?
Yeah, so we are migrating from the Hive Hadoop system into Snowflake, but it's more of a partial migration. We're only moving the enterprise data. We're leaving the product data in that system and all of that intact, and then we are also taking data from all of these random disparate systems. So, I think we used to have some of our HR data lived in this like very secured, locked away RDS instance that pretty much nobody had the keys to. And so, taking away those systems, putting them all into one. And so the biggest drivers for this were data privacy, right? Obviously, HR data is extremely sensitive. We need to have that in a system that can fulfill all of those requirements, right? In addition to that, we also needed a bus plan, right? When you have these disparate systems like this, maybe we have one person who has access to this. What happens when they get hit by a bus, right? Like there's nothing we can do. We need a bus plan. And so, combining all of this into one platform, that can make it as secure as that, random instance was huge for us.
Very nice. So would you say data privacy for HR data? But what about the rest of the data from Hadoop, Hive to Snowflake that's not HR? What were the drivers for those pieces of data elements?
So a lot of that was also data privacy. Yeah. So for example, like our financial data, we want to we obviously we want to have a lot of that the stuff that feeds reporting, especially when it goes to our investors, like that needs to be pretty secure. Not just from a read point, but also from a write point, right? Especially at Pinterest, a public company, we have SOX that we need to remain compliant with. So that was pretty important as well.
That is great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for that. That was a really good background. Mark, how about Autodesk?
Yeah, Autodesk's journey sounds a lot like yours, Jessica. I think we were in the same boat where we had a Hive data lake where, at the time, it seemed like the right thing to do with everything. 10 years ago, Hadoop was going to take over the world, put everything in there, or a data lake. And that was the situation when I started working with Autodesk and joined. And we had the same challenges, data security, the right tools for data ingestion, the right tools for analytics. Those were all very difficult things to do in the data lake, and the user frustration was mounting as well. So back in 2019 is when we started our journey with the migration to a new platform, which was Snowflake. And the same thing, deciding the right data to put into Snowflake. Doesn't all have to be in Snowflake, but the enterprise data, our most important business assets, things that users rely on for reporting to run the business. That was the place we started.
That is good.
Yeah, since then we've migrated most of our enterprise data sets into Snowflake. Same thing with us, where we've left the product data, the high volume event data in the data lake. It's still a good fit there. And at the same time, we've had all these positive outcomes. We've increased privacy, security. Our access control position is much stronger, but we've also increased our velocity. Being able to get data into the platform is much simpler. Being able to build data products on the platform is much simpler. So we've really changed the platform to make it more approachable, more usable, and increase security and reduce costs. We really have been able to achieve all those things.
That is great. So I have to say to our viewers, to make this this episode, this session real, we are doing this unscripted, and I am discovering at the same time you are what these three wonderful people are doing. And so it comes as a surprise to me, Mark, how similar is your story to Jessica's? Same source, same target, Hadoop to Snowflake, but not all data, it's partial data, and same drivers, more or less, which is data security and privacy. And so neither of you have decommissioned your Hadoop. Is that correct?
That's right.
Correct.
But do you plan to keep it on? Because, Hadoop at some point, is starting to, we see there's a lot of movement away. Do you see that happening or no?
We'll likely continue to run our data lake for product usage data sets and analytics use cases indefinitely. I mean, we can't do everything in Snowflake at the same price point that we can in the data lake. That's what it comes down to. It's economics. But everything else we can possibly move to Snowflake, we are moving.
That is really good. I'm actually happy to hear that, because I keep saying that, there's still massive deployments of Hadoop, and this whole notion that Hadoop is gone is not really correct. So you just validated that. So we'll come back to these topics, but let's go to Nikhil next. Nikhil, what's your story at Airbnb?
Yeah, so there is a bit of a context here with Airbnb. We are a company that is very heavily open source first, and have produced open source projects like Airflow, Superset, etc. in the past, and still pretty much the ethos of the company. So I personally work with high volume user facing data, and all of that we are doubling down on the Hadoop ecosystem. Not technically Hadoop, but like the MapReduce philosophy, all built on S3 and like using open source stuff. Otherwise, using Spark, etc. And the other trend at Airbnb is making data more real time. So there is like disparate data sources, right? From tables that land into Hive at a batch interval kind of stuff like daily tables, etc. And then there is data that flows through streaming systems like Kafka, Kinesis, etc. So our goal, like especially because I work in ML, is to create a unified view over data, given that it's equivalent in both Kafka and Hive. What I mean by that is like, if you're capturing user view stream or something that exists as a Kafka stream, but also exists as a logged Hive table somewhere or logged Spark table somewhere, right? So we want people to be able to like write views on top of this, analytics views or feature views on top of this, that behind the scenes look at the right sources. And the other trend at Airbnb is capturing data models itself. Like if you look at the traditional relational model, right? Hive or like the traditional like Oracle, MySQL kind of stuff. It talks about like timeless relationships. It doesn't really talk about how data is arriving into the warehouse, right? So there is two kinds of data. Like you must be all familiar with fact and dim. Right? Fact is like new data happening that day, that lands through a stream as like a single partition. Then there's dim style data where each partition contains snapshot of the entire user information. Like a good example is transactions, for example, are facts or events. And the account balances for each user taken as a snapshot is a dim. Right. So traditionally, the problem here has been that data warehouses and SQL engines and compute engines don't capture this concepts natively. And what we have seen at Airbnb is that having an explicit way to capture this into the compute engine has been pretty high leverage.
So Nikhil, there's this modeling of data into fact and dim. By dim, you mean dimensions, right? See, that's a very OLAP concept. That's such a data warehouse concept. So is that how are you data modeling it like that in Hive? Is that where you're doing that?
So it's more at the reference layer in some sense. Like when you refer to a table, we just say the table name, right? We don't truly understand the data model behind the table and what each partition contains. Right. What we have done with our compute engine, which is going to be open source soon, is that the access layer is slightly different. You said this is a table, which is a dim or a fact, right? And behind the scenes, we take care of producing the right data when you express a view on top of that table.
I see. So you just said something that was quite big. Your compute engine is going to be open source soon.
Yes.
What is the name of your compute engine?
So in my talks previously, we have maybe given about 10 of them. We'll be giving one like soon too. We used to call it Zipline, but for...
So you call it what?
Zipline.
Zipline, I see. Okay.
But when we open source, we are going to rename it to Chronon, given that there is an existing trademark on Zipline.
So you're renaming it to Chrona?
Yeah, Chronon.
How do you spell that?
Yeah, Chronon, Chronon.
Chronon. Okay. Wow. So we already have Spark, we have Dask, we have Presto, we have Starburst, Trino, Dremio. Now we're going to have Chronon. So
it's built on Spark. We kind of like it has a compute layer which extends the relational model that already exists in the warehouse and allows people to define feature views and all. One different thing is that we want these views to work both offline and online because we need to deal with this in machine learning. Right. This needs to work for training as well as serving. So training is, I already have some, labels. I just need to index some features for this data point. And for surveying, it's like, I don't have any labels. I'm going to like make a query right now. Please respond with all the features, right? These are like two very different kinds of use cases. One is like ultra high throughput, the other one is like, it requires ultra low latency, but not really like high throughput, right? One cares about efficiency, the other one cares about latency.
Yes, absolutely. Very interesting. All right, so we will come back to that. So I think many of us are learning about this new compute engine that's coming into the market for the first time. At least I am. Jess, if I may go back to you, when you started this migration from Hadoop HR data, finance data, how did you manage to maintain business continuity while this was going on? What's some of the process that you employed?
One thing that we were really lucky to have is because we're doing this partial migration, we're not, we're not getting rid of Hive and all of that. We have time where we can have duplicate reports, right? So we migrate all that data over. We don't turn off the spigot, if you will, that's still going to Hive. We pull, we make a duplicate report. We point all of that to the new stuff. We let it go for a little bit to make sure that, we're seeing all the same things, all the numbers look the same. And then we eventually just switch people over to use that new dashboard. So I guess, we're really lucky there. With some of the HR data, it's kind of it's a new system. So we don't really have that problem. We didn't have, because of it being in this weird little section, it wasn't actually connected to, Tableau and things like that. And so, it's really that now they have access to this. Yeah.
So Jess, very interested in learning more about your stack. So what cloud you're on, which ingestion tools are you using? How are you doing data transformation? And what are you using for both your BI reporting and for machine learning?
Yeah, great question. So we're an AWS heavy shop. So we're using that. We have some tooling. We have some like internal tooling for pipelining. So we're using Airflow like everybody else. And I have a million operators that I've written to really simplify the process for people. We're also using Fivetran to get data from some of our enterprise sources. As far as BI goes, we're using Tableau. And we're kind of working on getting, we're still working on getting the perfect system set up for doing downstream transformations of tables. Right now, we have a homegrown solution for the other side of the shop, the product data, but it doesn't actually meet our requirements for security because it doesn't allow us to use OAuth to Snowflake to make sure that you're only transforming the tables you're actually allowed to see. And so as a result, I kind of have I've actually taught all of my BI analysts, all of them, how to use the command line, how to check things into access control. They're all creating DAGs and they have dev apps that, I wrote some Makefile that set up their dev app for them and all of this. So I have this I'm incredibly fortunate to have this crazy smart team of analysts who's really motivated and who's just really hungry for knowledge. So I had so many conversations about okay, here's the thing. It's going to be a little bit of work to learn how to use Airflow, but you got to trust me on this one. Every company in the industry uses Airflow for the most part. It's going to look really good on your resume. And, the next time you go to a job interview, they're going to be like, so how on earth did you get Airflow experience? That's really interesting, right? So we've got a lot going on.
Yeah, no, I love it. In fact, I think Airflow and what Astronomer is doing and about open lineage. So it's very exciting space right now. This is interesting what you just said about you still finding the optimal data transformation. You recently got back from Snowflake Summit. There's heavy emphasis on Snowpark. In fact, there's a whole developer focus now on Snowflake. Is that something on your in your purview?
Yeah, I have. Oh my goodness, they announced so many new things at this summit too that I feel like I need to take a whole week off just to spend. Like, nobody put any meetings on my calendar. I need to go through and see like what all the implications are for us from all of these things. Because yeah, it's something I haven't thought a whole lot about, and I need to actually dive in and see if any of those options would, solve some of our problems.
Very nice. Okay. So we want to keep diving deeper, but I'm going to go to Mark. And Mark, same question. Please educate us on your data stack.
Yeah, the stack we moved to, it's got all the usual suspects. Along with Snowflake, we're using Fivetran for ingestion. We're using dbt for transformation. We use Airflow for orchestration. We're using Looker predominantly for BI and Power BI as well.
What cloud are you on?
We're on AWS.
I see.
Yeah, our Hive data lake is largely built on EMR technology. I mean, we're completing migration to EMR now. So we run Spark, Hive, and Presto in the data lake.
I see. I want to ask all three of you, but Mark, since we are talking, what do you have on premises? When I hear Hadoop, EMR is great. Love EMR, and the serverless is coming out. But there's also Hadoop is super cost effective on premises. Do you have any on premises at Autodesk?
We don't power in the Autodesk data platform. There was a time when there was some on-prem Hadoop. That was a Cloudera cluster that was hosting other applications, but for this platform, there's no on-prem. And
what about Pinterest?
I don't believe that we have any on-prem still. I know that at some point we did, but I think we've since migrated everything over to AWS.
I see. Okay. So Nikhil, same thing. What is Airbnb's data stack?
Yeah, there are different use cases, I guess. Right, for orchestration, it's Airflow. For high throughput analytics compute or feature compute, it is Spark. And for interactive BI style use cases, it used to be Druid, and I think we are moving to Star Rocks now. And there is also Presto in the mix.
Yeah.
But I think things are moving towards Star Rocks in that general interactive queries and like charting domain. Right? Then there is Flink too for stream processing. And all of this sits on AWS, on EMR in some sense, and then there is Kubernetes involved somewhere there, mostly for streaming jobs and serving.
Okay, fantastic. This is, and what about since you do a lot of machine learning, what does that architecture look like?
Yeah, so there is two parts to it, right? One thing is the offline feature compute to generate training data, and that is purely on Spark, which sits on S3 on EMR, all on AWS, nothing on that.
Are you using a feature store?
We build a feature store. So
right.
What I mentioned, like one, it's part feature compute engine.
I see.
Part feature store.
Ah, wow. Okay. All right. So you said there are two parts, and the other part is?
Online serving stuff. That is also based on Spark for compute and Spark streaming for compute. And then there is Kafka, which is what we read the data from. And we have an internal key value store, which is loosely based on HBase. So we disassembled HBase, took some parts out of it, and reassembled it into a distributed database.
What is that? What is it called?
It's not talked about publicly. I don't think you'll find any references, but we internally call it muscle, MUSSEL, muscle.
Muscle. Okay, sounds good. All right. So I'm going to go back to you, Jess. Sorry, I'm maintaining a round robin thing here. So we only have a few minutes left. What advice would you give to the listeners, some best practices of working in this modern data architecture?
Yeah. So I guess like, I don't know, one of my big things is like, we love to talk about best practices, like they're like, bestowed upon us from above, and you have to operate within them at all times, or totally screw it and scrap it and let's just like do whatever because nothing matters. I think it's really important whenever we think about best practices to remember that that best practice has some set of requirements and that it's working within and trying to solve. And if those requirements don't match your requirements, those aren't your best practices. And to not, always be thinking about what is the best thing ever, because sometimes that's not actually the best thing for your organization. And it's actually more of, this is a guideline. This is a way to think about it. And, maybe this is what works for you, but not to just, scrap it, throw everything away if you can't adhere to that.
So what you're saying is be very requirements, business focused rather than technology hype focused. These things will look good on my resume. I should do this, So, and you're lucky to have an amazing team. So they hopefully make things much easier for you. So, yeah.
I work with some pretty amazing people.
Very nice. That is great. Yeah. Mark, how about yourself? Pieces of advice do you have and recommendations?
How to distill them down. I agree with everything Jessica said, but our environment previously was a bit of the Wild West with the AWS stack that we were coming from, and as we've scaled and turned our offering into more of a platform offering, really focusing on self-service and everything, it's been important to standardize and really come to a set of patterns, a set of tools, a set of practices that we don't just encourage people to adopt. It's like, if you want support from us, you will adopt these patterns. Mm-hmm. That's been critical to scaling and keeping our costs manageable. Some other advice, during any migration, pick the right use cases. Don't try to do everything at once. And break things into smaller chunks. It really helped us. Our migration has a long tail. Like you'll never stop migrating, and as soon as you get through the cycle, a new one starts. So, it's never going to end, but we're already, looking beyond our first gen Snowflake migration. What comes next? We're going to keep investing in migrating stuff in the data lake. We're going to keep investing in real time. We're investing in our ML platform too. It's just, just keeping in mind that all these things have to be completed, in discrete units, but at the same time, it's going to be a years long cycle.
It sounds like you also need to take a week off.
I would love a week off.
Snowflakes, new announcements.
Oh, for that, yeah. I thought just to have a week off, but to look at
no, not just you. Sorry, no vacations allowed. There's too much going on in our industry. Yep. So okay, so with that, Nikhil, what advice would you have for us?
I guess each of the domains that I described in the data platform we have had several learnings. More than advice, I think that's how I would put it. So, because Airflow is built at Airbnb, maybe I can safely critique it. I think there is a lineage that exists across DAGs in Airflow that really is missing. And people have been using DBT and other kinds of stuff to like plug those gaps. And as an industry, it's, I think, a burning problem, and we should be really careful about how we manage that lineage and maybe try to. So one direction that this could go in is that Airflow could itself manage lineage and truly understand data, right? What are the inputs, what are the outputs, and how is everything connected? And not having that is a huge pain for the company right now. And the other thing is be very intentional with timestamps in data. So when people who are producing data need to like have a convention around what's the time zone, what's the time granularity of the timestamps that are being produced. It's a huge pain to deal with different kinds of timestamps in the warehouse. It sounds like a minor nit, but it snowballs into a huge cascade effect where people are writing all kinds of crazy logic just to deal with time.
Very nice. Okay, great. So with that, we come to an end. Thank you so much for joining this panel today. I really learned a lot and enjoyed talking to you. Wishing you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.